And we've actually saved one of the most important topics, actually, this week for the final few moments of the show. We're joined right now by Christine Jardine. She's a Liberal Democrat MP to talk about, well, not just a vote in Scottish Parliament yesterday, but a vote coming up in the Commons on Friday related to assisted dying. A very good afternoon to you, Christine.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Well, we had this vote from MSPs yesterday, basically a landmark vote. They voted by 70 votes to 56 to basically allow a bill that's called the Assisted Dying for Terminally Ill Adults Scotland Bill to clear its first parliamentary hurdle at Holyrood. We'll see where that goes in the future. But we've also got this vote at the House of Commons for England in terms of the bill to bring in assisted dying here, which has been brought in as a private member's bill by the Labour MP Kim Leadbeater. You're a co-signatory to that bill. I'm in a very difficult quandary on this, and I think a lot of MPs are. And it would turn out, you know, we've got doctors who've reported today, they're kind of completely mixed on this. The Royal College of Psychiatrists, they're unhappy about the bill. I have been for many years, and I'm a huge proponent of people having the right to assisted dying. I would go further than Kim Leadbeater and you in this bill. I would want it for people who have just basically an unbearable quality of life, not just if they have believed to be only 6 months to live. However, the bill as it stands is not a bill I would vote for if I were an MP, certainly after taking out that the safeguards, particularly of things like a High Court judge, making sure that people had not been coerced or under pressure. Why do you think that this bill is still worth voting for?
Well, first of all, I don't agree that that is taken out as safeguard. What they have done with that is they examined the proposed bill line by line, and they spoke to experts and witnesses. And what the legal witnesses said was that the way it was set up with a High Court judge was not the best way to do it, that's not what a High Court judge's expertise is. So they've brought in a panel whose expertise helps the situation, will look at, the person's personal circumstances, spot any kind of coercion. They've improved the safeguard. They've made it a panel of people overseen by a High Court
Well, you
judge.
say that, but this will be equivalent
I don't say that lightly, Julia, because I did actually go and ask, because I wanted to know why it had been changed. And I've spoken to Kim about this, and I've spoken to everybody on the committee, and they all say that the reason that they did it was they listened to the advice and they were told that this would make it stronger.
OK, but and the advice was in particular the fact that the courts would be frozen up. There aren't that many High Court judges. There'll be no. That was one of the reasons. It was simply not
the whole reason.
It wasn't the only reason, but it was one of the reasons. It was totally impractical, and just with people who have 6 months to live, frankly, they'd all be dead by the time their case came to court. However, if you have a panel of people, it's like an abortion clinic. Would someone be working in an abortion clinic who's morally or practically opposed to assisted dying? No, of course not. The people on the panel would be people who think, yes, this is something that is a valid choice. Now, we know in other countries, and one of the reasons I thought the bill originally was a good idea was all these extra safeguards, but we know in other countries there has been a slippery slope, and more people who are not getting good end-of-life care, and that's not changing anytime soon. People who are poor, people who are lonely, people who feel they're a burden on their family, they are opting for assisted suicide rather than other options. That's got to be a concern, surely.
That is why the bill is framed the way it is, why it's only terminal adults with a terminal diagnosis. Because in countries where that legislation has been introduced, that sort of legislation, places like Australia, Oregon recently, and the United States, those countries, there is no expansion of the definition. I know the countries you're talking about. You're talking about Canada, Benelux. That was a different law. That did do what you actually said that you would be in favour of. It's about, more than a terminal illness, quality of life, and then it gets expanded. No, this bill has been very, very carefully and tightly framed so that on the face of the bill, it says terminally ill adults. And that is so that it can be kept to terminally ill adults, to reassure people who are concerned about what's been termed the slippery slope, about people with disabilities who I completely understand why they're concerned, but it's why, for me and for Kim and everybody else involved in this, it's vitally important that they have the reassurance of knowing that this bill is only and can only ever be about people with a terminal diagnosis. And even then, they have to go through all sorts of safeguards. And one of the curious things and reassuring things for me is that what all the research and all the countries who have laws like this, and this will be the strongest of its type, all of the safeguards which have already been built in and the amendments which are proposed, which we'll be discussing over the next few Fridays, will make it the strongest in the world. And in those circumstances, where people get the go-ahead, they get approval, if you like, for assisted dying, they go through all the steps that they will have to go through, they speak to all the experts, they go before the panel, all of that. They don't all take it up, because one of the biggest things, and Liam McArthur spoke about this so movingly yesterday, a constituent of his who'd gone to him, the anxiety, the fear that people who have a terminal diagnosis go through, the thought of what, not death itself, but what they may have to go through before they die, is horrifying. And the constituent that he had spoken to, and it was incredibly moving, had pleaded with him and said that removing that anxiety would make whatever time they had left better. Now,
but because they knew they had that choice. And it's certainly a choice I and my family will want for ourselves. But again, I just so worry about some of the safeguards. I know we should talk about this at greater length, and I know you've got that vote coming back, the bill coming back on Friday, and no doubt this will continue to be debated by MPs and indeed by the public as well. Really appreciate you joining us, Christine Jardine, Liberal Democrat MP, co-signatory of that assisted dying bill in England, Kim Leadbeater's bill. Where are you on this, Claire Pearsall?
I'm really, really uncomfortable. I think it's been changed so much that I support people's right, but it's not what was originally put in front of MPs, and I don't think the safeguards are there.
There's that concern. It's like, well, I want it for me and my family, but I worry about other people. And then is that absolute patronising attitude people might have there?
No, I don't think so. I think you're well within your rights. You've got to have safeguards around these things.
OK, Claire, thank you very much.